Good morning, boys and girls. Welcome back. So glad you're here. If you remember, we are at the end of 1 Samuel, and we left off. Do you remember where David is? David has just returned from Ziklag, and it's burned. The city he left is burned to the ground, and his family is gone. What a situation David finds himself in. Boys and girls, I don't know if you remember the last verse that we read last week, but we're going to read it one more time as we pick up in this story. 1 Samuel 30, verse 8. And David inquired at the Lord, saying, shall I pursue after this troop? Shall I overtake them? And he answered him, pursue, for thou shalt surely overtake them, and without fail recover all. So at this time we said when David came back with his men were ready to kill David. His men were like, our families are gone, our possessions are gone, our city is burned, and this is your fault. They're ready to kill him. And what does David do? Does David pick up his sword and say, oh, you're not going to? No. David stopped and David prayed. David talked to God. And did God answer him, boys and girls? He sure did. And he gave him a promise. Does God ever break his promises, boys and girls? No, God never does. God never breaks his promises. A little side note story. I was thinking about that while Peter and I were pinky swearing. I recently told some boys that I would go to their football game. And I told them, I'll be there. I'll see you tomorrow. Problem. I showed up at 1 o'clock. Their game was at 11. I missed it. Good news is I'd watched the one before that, but I felt really bad. Sometimes, boys and girls, we make promises, and I fully intended on going to that game, and I was there at 1 o'clock, and I realized the kids playing weren't the ones I went to watch. But yeah, they were little. And yeah, anyways, there was definitely a size difference. I knew I had the wrong game. But sometimes adults break their promises, whether they mean to or not. But God never breaks his promises. So God gave him, he said, you will recover all. Everything that got taken, they were going to recover. Well, that's where we left off, boys and girls. So David is in Ziklag and he pursues. He is after the Amalekites. He is going to go and he is going to get them because God has ensured. Peter's just not sure how David traveled at that point. God has promised David he's going to get him. So they set off. They're in pursuit. And as they're traveling, they come across an Egyptian man. They find him. They bring him to David. In verse number 11, it says, and they found an Egyptian in the field and brought him to David and gave him bread and he did eat. And they made him drink water. And they gave him a piece of a cake of figs and 2 clusters of raisins. And when he had eaten, his spirit came again to him, for he had eaten no bread nor drunk any water 3 days and 3 nights. I don't know about you boys and girls, but I sometimes can't even go 3 hours without having something to eat or something to drink. But he went 3 days and 3 nights without eating. And boys and girls, this is kind of a random little tidbit, but did you notice how God gave detail? Our God is a God of detail. He is specific, and when he gives us things, it's right on time, and he gives us exactly what we need. But it listed out there for us exactly what they gave the Egyptian to eat. Well, the Egyptian eats it, and it says his spirit came back in him. Can you imagine how tired and worn out he must have felt? How weak, yeah, that's right, Peter, how weak his body must have felt after 3 days and 3 nights without eating or drinking anything? While his spirit comes back into him and he's able to talk, and David and the Egyptian talk, and come to find out this Egyptian man had been a servant of one of the Amalekites, and he was there when they burned Ziklag. And he tells David, yeah, we burned it. And they took everybody, and he tells them what happened. And David's like, well, can you show me where they are? Can you show me where the Amalekites are? And the Egyptian's a little hesitant. He's like, well, you have to promise me something. You have to promise me that you won't turn me back over to my master. And David's like, I got this. I promise you, I am not going to send you back to the Amalekites. I'm not going to turn you back over to them. Well, they travel along and they find the Amalekites. The Egyptian leads them to where the Amalekites are. verse number 16, it says, and when he had brought him down, so when the Egyptian has brought David down, behold, they were spread abroad upon all the earth, eating and drinking and dancing, because of all the great spoil that they had taken out of the land of the Philistines and out of the land of Judah. They get there, David sees them, and they're partying. They're having their best life. They're like, look at all this stuff we got. Look at all of this. It's great, but it's about to be really bad. Okay, verse number 17, and David smote them from the twilight even unto the evening of the next day. And there escaped not a man of them, save 400 young men, which rode upon camels and fled. So there you go. I knew it was coming for you, Peter. Camels. And David, verse 18, and David recovered all that the Amalekites had carried away. And David rescued his 2 wives. God promised he would recover all, and he did recover all, including his 2 wives who had been taken. Verse number 19, and there was nothing lacking to them, neither small nor great, neither sons nor daughters, neither spoil nor anything that they had taken to them. David recovered all. God had given them back everything that had been taken from them. God fulfilled his promise. Boys and girls, God never breaks a promise. God always fulfills his promises. And what we see is David obeyed, boys and girls. God told David to pursue. God didn't tell David to go hide. These people want to kill you. Go hide, retreat, run away. No, God said pursue, go after, and David obeyed. Boys and girls, obedience isn't always easy. Obedience can be very difficult. Obedience can be hard. It goes on to say, and I'll try to abbreviate or sum this up, but when they had gone, there were some of David's men who were weak from battle and weren't able to go all the way with them. They had been left by a brook, and they come back now. They've conquered, they've got their things back, and they come back to that brook. And the men who were with David were like, hey, we're keeping this all for us. This is our stuff. We got it. We're not sharing with them. They didn't come with us. And David, again, is faced with a difficult decision, boys and girls. What is he going to do with this spoil? What is he going to do with these 2 groups of men who are saying 2 different things? What's he going to do about it? Well, verse number 23, then said David, ye shall not do so, my brother. And he's talking about to the ones about keeping it to themselves. With that which the Lord hath given us, who hath preserved us and delivered the company that came against us into our hand. He says, it's God who gave it to us. It's God who delivered us. It wasn't about David. Boys and girls, how often do we do something and we essentially want to pat ourselves on the back? Probably quite a bit, myself included, okay? We want that acknowledgement that we've done something good, but what does David say? This came from the Lord. It's the Lord who delivered us. And he gives credit to God for it. He doesn't take it on himself. He'll say, oh yeah, look at me. I brought back your wives and your families. He says, no, look at what God did for us. And because this is God's, this is everybody's spoil, not just ours. And David's able to kind of calm everybody down. Boys and girls, what this week do you need to give God credit for? What is it that God has done for you that you need to look around and say, wow, look at what God has done for me, and give God the credit? Because you know what, boys and girls, you get an A on that test. Who was it who gave you a brain? Yeah, God did. Who was it who woke you up that morning? Who was it who helped you study? God is the one who helped you. Now, I know you have parents who will help and things like that, but God's the one who gave you the ability and the capability to learn. God's the one who gave you the 2 feet to walk into school this morning. Okay, God's the one who gave you all those things. Do you give God the credit, boys and girls? Or do you take credit for yourself? That's a hard thing for us to learn. But the Bible tells us over and over, everything we have came from God. I hope this week, boys and girls, you'll take some time to thank God for everything he's given you.